I walked back from the mailbox, flipping through the usual clutter, ads, bills, a glossy catalog I didn't ask for. Then I froze. A credit card statement? That made no sense. Mark always got those digitally, straight to his phone. I couldn't remember the last time I held a paper copy. Something about it felt off, like it wasn't meant for me, but somehow landed in my hands anyway. I turned the envelope over, biting the inside of my cheek. Part of me wanted to toss it aside, pretend I hadn't seen it. But another part, stubborn, curious, maybe even suspicious, insisted I open it. I tore the seal and pulled out the papers, expecting grocery store charges, or maybe another one of Mark's endless gas station runs. Instead, a name leapt at me like a slap across the face. Lightside Hotel, 243, Seward Hours. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I scanned down the page, my fingers trembling. It wasn't just one charge. There were several, spread across weeks, each one linked to that same hotel. I whispered the name out loud, tasting it like poison. Lightside Hotel? I had never heard of it. Mark never mentioned it. And in that silence, an unease began to coil inside me, twisting tighter with every breath. I sank into the kitchen chair, the envelope still spread open in front of me. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, but it felt like time had slowed. My fingers traced the numbers, the dates, the bold letters spelling out a hotel I didn't know. My stomach clenched, that sick feeling you get when your instincts whisper something you don't want to hear. I kept thinking, why this hotel? Why these charges? Why hide it from me? I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a work expense. Maybe Mark had treated a client, or maybe he had some meeting there that just never came up in conversation. But if that were true, wouldn't he have mentioned it? He told me everything about his office politics, even the things I didn't care to hear. Yet this he'd buried. And the fact it showed up in a paper statement, when he usually kept everything digital, felt less like coincidence and more like fate throwing me a bone. I whispered it again, softer this time, like testing the weight of it in my mouth. Lightside Hotel. My throat tightened around the words. My mind played out a reel of possibilities I didn't want to see. My chest burned with the need for answers, but underneath that fire was fear. What if the answers confirmed the thought I dared not say out loud? I folded the paper slowly, but the damage was already done. I pressed the statement flat against the table, staring at the charges like they might rearrange themselves into something innocent. My pulse raced, and my palms felt damp against the paper. I could hear my own voice in a whisper, shaky but sharp. That's strange. He always checks it on his phone. Saying it out loud made it real, heavier somehow. The kitchen, once warm and ordinary, now felt cold and foreign, as if I didn't belong in my own home. I leaned back in the chair, closing my eyes for a second, and flashes of Mark's recent behavior started replaying. The late nights, the vague explanations, the way he'd brush me off with a quick smile when I asked too many questions. Each memory dug its claws deeper, pulling at the suspicion blooming in my chest. I hated myself for even thinking it, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't just business. I picked up the envelope again, clutching it like evidence. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination. One thing was clear. I couldn't just let this go. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And somewhere inside me, a quiet voice whispered that this discovery was only the beginning of something I could no longer ignore. The next morning, the credit card bill was still sitting on the counter, like a weight I couldn't shake. Every time I passed it, my eyes fell on those charges, and my chest tightened. I knew I couldn't sit in silence, waiting for some explanation that might never come. My hands shook as I picked up the phone, the number to the Lightside Hotel glowing on my screen. With a deep breath, I pressed call. The ringing echoed in my ear, each tone stretching longer than the last. I almost hung up, afraid of what I might hear. But then a bright, cheerful voice answered, "Lightside Hotel, how may I help you?" My throat went dry, but I forced myself to speak, my voice softer than usual. "Hello, I'd like to check if there's a reservation under the name Mark Turner." There was a pause, just a few seconds, but long enough to make my stomach twist. Then she said it, casual and smiling through the line. Yes, Mrs. Turner. Mr. Turner is a regular guest here. He's reserved a suite for 2 at the end of the month. My hand gripped the phone tighter, the world around me tilting as though the floor had given way beneath my feet. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Her words echoed in my ear. A regular guest. A suite for 2. My chest tightened so much it hurt, and I felt heat rise up my neck. I tried to keep my voice calm, steady, like I hadn't just had my world cracked open. Thank you, I managed to say, my tone almost sweet. I'll be there myself to check in. My hand trembled as I ended the call, the click louder than it should have been. I set the phone down on the counter, but my body didn't follow. I stayed frozen, my fingers pressed into the cool surface, my heart beating against my ribs like it wanted out. My mind was a whirlwind, every laugh we'd shared, every promise he'd made, now stained with the image of another woman slipping into that hotel suite. Anger clawed at me, but underneath it was something colder, a hollow ache I couldn't name. I walked slowly to the window, staring out at the quiet street, neighbors going about their lives as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed for me. The hotel clerk's words replayed again and again, each time cutting deeper. He hadn't just betrayed me, he'd done it often, enough to be called irregular. That word, so casual, felt like a knife twisting. And in that moment, trembling but resolute, I knew this was no longer about doubt. It was about proof. I sank onto the edge of the couch, my hands gripping my knees to stop them from shaking. The silence in the room pressed down heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. I whispered his name under my breath, Mark, as if saying it might summon the man I thought I knew, the man I believed I could trust. But now, that name felt like a stranger's, coded in lies. My mind raced through scenarios, excuses he might try to spin. Work dinners, client meetings, late-night emergencies. But none of it held up, not with a suite for 2 waiting at the end of the month. He hadn't just stepped out of line. He had built a whole second life, brick by brick, with someone else. And the cruelest part? He had left the clues in plain sight, thinking I'd never look. I picked up the statement again, my thumb pressing against the hotel charges until the paper wrinkled. The betrayal sat in my chest like a storm cloud, but with it came a strange surge of clarity. I wasn't going to confront him with suspicions. He'd just deny, twist, gaslight. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to catch him in the act. And though fear still clung to me, so did something sharper. Resolve. A few days later, Mark strolled into the kitchen like nothing in the world was wrong, suitcase already propped by the door. He smiled, casual and easy, the way he always did before one of his business trips. I have to go out of state for a few days, he said smoothly. Check on another branch office. I forced a smile in return, my lips curving though every muscle in my body wanted to scream. Of course, I replied sweetly, my voice steady even as my chest tightened. Safe trip, darling. Don't worry about me. My words slipped out coated in sugar, but inside my stomach was in knots. I kept my hands busy with the coffee mug, gripping it a little too hard so he wouldn't see them tremble. If he noticed the act, he didn't show it. He just looked pleased with my compliance. He grabbed his suitcase handle, leaning toward the door. And don't forget the dog food. We're almost out. He tossed over his shoulder, as if errands were all I had to think about while he planned his betrayal. I nodded lightly, playing the part of the devoted wife. But the moment he turned away, my heart turned cold. The dog food would wait. I had another destination in mind, one where the truth was waiting for me. I watched him walk out the door, the sound of his footsteps fading down the driveway. The engine of his car roared to life, then dwindled into silence as he pulled away. I stood there for a moment, the house suddenly too quiet, my reflection staring back at me from the kitchen window. I whispered to myself, out of state, huh? The words tasted bitter, but repeating them gave me strength. I grabbed my bag and keys, moving quickly, fueled by the mix of dread and determination that had been boiling inside me since that phone call. I wasn't running errands today, and I sure wasn't going to sit at home waiting like some naive housewife. No, my path was already set. I was heading straight to the Lightside Hotel. The thought alone made my pulse race faster, my chest tight with anticipation and fear. As I slid into my car, I could feel the tension in my shoulders. Every motion, turning the key, adjusting the mirror, shifting gears, felt like stepping deeper into a truth I couldn't escape. The familiar streets blurred past me, but my focus was sharp. I was driving not just toward a hotel, but toward answers, toward the proof I needed. And with each mile, the woman I used to be slipped further away. The highway stretched out before me, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I replayed every moment from the past few weeks, his late-night texts, the sudden trips, the way he avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions. Each memory piled on top of the next until the weight of them nearly suffocated me. Still, I kept driving, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to control. The hotel's sign appeared on the horizon, glowing faintly against the afternoon sky. My breath caught. Seeing it in real life made everything feel heavier, more undeniable. This wasn't just a name on a bill anymore. It was a place, standing tall in front of me, holding secrets I had no choice but to face. My stomach churned, but my resolve only sharpened. I had come this far. I wasn't turning back. I pulled into the parking lot, my hand slick against the steering wheel. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the glass doors, imagining him walking through them with someone else. The thought made my blood boil. I shut off the engine and whispered to myself, "Time to find out." With that, I stepped out of the car, every nerve in my body buzzing, ready to follow this trail of lies to its bitter end. The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and perfume, the kind of scent meant to make people feel at ease. For me, it only made my stomach twist tighter. I walked up to the front desk, clutching my bag close, trying to steady my breath. The receptionist smiled politely, her voice warm. "How can I help you?" she asked. My lips curved in a calm smile I didn't feel. "I need the key for Mark Turner's suite," I said evenly. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, and without hesitation, she slid a key card across the counter. "Here you go, Mrs. Turner," she said, as if she'd done it a dozen times before. That confirmation, that instant recognition, hit me harder than I expected. My hand shook slightly as I took the card, but I forced my face into something composed, even gracious. I thanked her and turned toward the elevators, my legs heavy and light all at once. I didn't go straight to the suite. Instead, I lingered nearby, hidden just enough to keep a clear view of the hallway. My heart pounded against my ribs, each second stretching into an eternity. I didn't have to wait long. Minutes later, the elevator dinged, and there he was. Mark, laughing, hand intertwined with hers. A woman. Younger, bold, her laugh sharp enough to cut through me. The sight seared into me, and in that moment, the last pieces of denial shattered. My body moved before my mind caught up. I stepped out from the shadow of the hallway, my heels clicking against the polished floor. Their laughter died instantly, the air snapping tight like a rope pulled too far. Mark's eyes widened, his grip on her hand loosening as if it had burned him. "I hope the suite is big enough for 3, I said, my voice cold and steady, though inside, my heart thundered so violently I thought it might give me away. "Qui Claire?" he stammered, his face draining of color. He looked like a man caught in a spotlight, every excuse evaporating before it could even leave his lips. The woman beside him cocked her head, her smirk curling at the corners. "So this is the wife," she sneered, her voice dripping with mockery. "Took you long enough." She looked me up and down as if measuring me, daring me to flinch. "Yes," I said, letting the words slice through the silence. "The wife. The one who pays the bills for this little hideout." I held his gaze, refusing to blink, refusing to give him a single inch of ground. My pulse hammered in my ears, but my calm mask didn't falter. In that moment, I felt taller, stronger, even as pain carved deep into my chest. This wasn't just discovery. It was a reckoning. Mark's mouth opened, then shut again, his panic so raw it almost made me laugh. He stepped toward me, arms half raised as if he could somehow gather me back, smooth over the cracks. "Claire, please, let's talk about this." His voice shook, his confidence stripped bare. The woman beside him crossed her arms, her smirk never fading, as though she was enjoying every second of my humiliation. But humiliation wasn't what I felt. It was rage, pure, focused, burning in my chest like fire fed with gasoline. I tilted my head slightly, refusing to let my voice waver. "Talk? What's left to talk about, Mark? I saw you. I saw both of you." My words cut sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret it. If anything, the truth felt like power pouring out of me, finally released. The hallway buzzed with tension, the silence between us so heavy it almost hummed. I could see guests peeking from their doors, curious eyes catching on the scene, unraveling. Still, I didn't care. For years, I had lived quietly, obediently, trusting a man who had turned my love into a lie. And now, here he was, exposed, stripped of every excuse. I stood my ground, refusing to back down, ready for whatever storm would come next. Mark grabbed my arm gently but urgently, pulling me a few steps away from the woman, as if distance could erase what I had just seen. His voice came low, frantic. "Claire, you're overreacting. This isn't what it looks like." I yanked my arm free, heat rushing to my cheeks. "Don't you dare," I snapped, my words sharp enough to slice through the air. "I saw you walk in here with her, laughing like I don't exist." Behind him, she leaned against the wall, arms crossed, lips curled in a smirk that made my blood boil. "Maybe if you were enough for him, he wouldn't need me," she said, her tone dripping with contempt. The sting of her words hit me like a slap, but instead of crumbling, I felt my spine stiffen. I turned my gaze on her, my fury clear. "Enough? I built this marriage while you lurked in hotel rooms like a cheap secret." Mark's hands lifted again, desperate, his eyes darting between us. "Stop it, both of you," he pleaded. His face was pale, sweat gathering on his forehead, as if the walls themselves were closing in. But I wasn't about to soften, not now. The weight of his betrayal pressed down on me, fueling every word, every glare. For once, the lies were his to choke on, not mine. He reached for me again, his voice cracking under the weight of his panic. "Claire, listen to me. It doesn't mean anything. She doesn't mean anything. You're the one I love." His words, meant to soothe, only made bile rise in my throat. I let out a laugh, sharp and bitter, a sound I barely recognized as my own. "Love? You call this love? Spending our money on lies, sneaking around like a coward?" The mistress rolled her eyes, pushing off the wall with a lazy shrug. "You sound dramatic," she taunted, her tone full of false confidence. "He chose me, Claire. Maybe it's time you accept that." My fists clenched at my sides, nails digging into my palms until it hurt. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I held my ground. Instead, I met her gaze with a fire I didn't know I had. "Chosen? Sweetheart, you're just his distraction. I was his life." Mark's voice grew more frantic, the walls of his facade crumbling with every second. "Please, Claire, don't throw everything away over this. We can fix it. We can start over." He was begging now, his tone almost childlike, but I saw through it. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing the comfort, the stability, the safety I had built for him. And realizing that only made my resolve stronger. The hallway felt tighter with every passing second, like the walls themselves were pushing in on us. I could hear muffled voices behind nearby doors, people curious but unwilling to step out. My hands shook, but not from fear, from fury. I stared at Mark, really stared, and all I saw was a man stripped bare, scrambling to hold together the web of lies he'd spun. "You don't get to rewrite this, Mark. Not anymore," I said, my voice cutting clean through the tension. His lips quivered, his eyes glossy, but I refused to soften. I had given him years of devotion, my trust, my loyalty, and here he was, begging for forgiveness with her standing smugly by his side. My chest ached, but beneath the ache was steel. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking, making excuses, carrying the weight of his mistakes. This time, he would carry every ounce of it himself. I squared my shoulders, my breath steadying as if a decision had already been made deep inside me. You broke us the moment you walked into that room with her. Don't you dare put this on me. His face crumbled, but I didn't flinch. The mistress let out a small laugh, but I barely heard it. All I knew was that the man I thought I married no longer existed, and I was ready to show him just how much that would cost. I slipped my phone out of my bag, my hands steady now, almost calm. The record button glowed red on the screen, capturing every frantic word, every smirk, every ounce of humiliation he tried to bury under excuses. Thanks to your little habit, Mark, I said evenly, holding up the credit card bill for both of them to see. I've got all the proof I need for court. My voice rang louder than I intended, and I didn't care who heard. Mark's face drained, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Claire, wait, please, we can fix this. His words felt empty, pathetic, nothing more than scraps of the man he once pretended to be. The woman at his side shifted, suddenly less smug, her smirk faltering as the reality of my calm precision set in. This wasn't a fight she could win with cheap words. I lowered the phone slowly, my eyes never leaving his. No, Mark, I said, the words tasting like steel. You broke it. You and your mistress can keep each other. I'll keep the house, the accounts, and my dignity. Saying it out loud filled me with a surge of strength I hadn't felt in years, like reclaiming pieces of myself he had chipped away. I turned toward the door, every step deliberate, every step mine. I could hear him stumble after me, his footsteps quick, desperate. Claire, don't do this. Please, we can start over. I'll change, I promise. His voice cracked in the hallway, a hollow echo of all the broken promises I'd heard before. I didn't slow down. I kept my back straight, my grip tight on the phone and the envelope, the two weapons that mattered most now. For once, I had the upper hand and I wasn't giving it back. The other woman stayed behind. I could feel her glare pressing into me like daggers. But she didn't follow. Maybe she knew this wasn't her fight anymore. Maybe she realized that once the money dried up, so would her interest. Whatever her reason, I didn't care. She was just a shadow in the corner, another reminder of the life Mark thought he could build on lies. At the elevator, I pressed the button with calm precision. The doors slid open with a soft chime, and I stepped inside without looking back. My reflection in the mirrored walls stared back at me, pale but unbroken, eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small or powerless. I felt like a woman taking back her story, one floor at a time. As the elevator descended, my chest filled with something unfamiliar. Relief. Not the fragile kind that fades when the next problem arrives, but a solid weight lifting off me. I gripped the phone tighter, knowing the video and that credit card bill would speak louder than any excuse Mark could ever invent. For once, I wasn't the one pleading or bending. I was walking away with proof, with power, with my dignity intact. When the doors opened to the lobby, I stepped out into the golden light spilling through the glass doors. Each stride toward the exit felt like reclaiming ground I had lost for years. Behind me, I could almost hear Mark's panic bleeding through the walls, but I didn't turn back. That chapter of my life was over, sealed in evidence and silence. What came next would be mine to decide. I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the crisp evening air. The cool breeze rushed against my face, clearing the last of the fog in my mind. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with freedom, with finality. For the first time in years, I felt whole. I wasn't just leaving a hotel, I was leaving him, leaving the lies, leaving the weight of a marriage built on betrayal. Months later, I found myself sitting at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place with chipped mugs and the smell of fresh coffee drifting through the air. The sunlight poured across the table, warming my skin as I sipped slowly, savoring the taste of peace. My laptop sat open, contracts and emails filling the screen, not for him, not for us, but for me. My life, finally on my terms. My divorce had gone through quicker than I imagined. The prenup, combined with that neat little trail of evidence, left no room for Mark to squirm. The house was mine, the accounts were secure, and the weight that had crushed me for years had vanished. I didn't just survive him, I outgrew him. And the glow on my face, the ease in my shoulders, proved it to anyone who cared to look. A friend slid into the chair across from me, smiling as she studied me. "You look lighter, Claire, happier, free." I couldn't help but smile back, my chest warm with the truth of it. "Because I am," I said softly, a grin spreading across my face. Losing him wasn't a tragedy, it was a blessing in disguise. Saying it aloud felt like sealing the final chapter. It didn't take long for Mark's perfect little world to crumble. Word of the scandal spread fast. His mistress wasn't as discreet as he'd hoped, and once the money started drying up, so did her affection. I heard she walked out on him one night without even looking back. His parents, embarrassed and disappointed, kept their distance too. Suddenly, the man who thought he had everything was left with nothing but silence. Meanwhile, I thrived in ways I hadn't allowed myself to before. I redecorated the house, made it feel like mine again, every room a declaration that I was free. I started new projects, invested in myself, even picked up hobbies I'd abandoned years ago. I filled my days with laughter and coffee dates, long walks with the dog, and quiet nights with a good book. Each moment stitched me back together, stronger than before. Sometimes, when people asked about him, I'd shrug and say, "He gave me the best gift he could, the chance to start over." It wasn't bitterness in my voice anymore, just truth. I had been broken, yes, but I had rebuilt myself into someone even better. And that glow people noticed? It wasn't revenge, it was freedom. One evening, as I sat in that same cafe, my phone buzzed on the table. His name lit up the screen, Mark. For a moment, I just stared at it, my coffee warming my hands. A year ago, that call would have sent me running, desperate to hear his voice, desperate to fix what couldn't be fixed. Now it only made me smile. I let it ring, untouched, until the screen faded to black. I whispered to myself, steady and serene, the best gift he ever gave me was leaving my life. And I meant it with every ounce of my being. There was no anger anymore, no ache, just clarity, just peace. It was like finally setting down a heavy suitcase I had carried for too long. My shoulders felt light, my heart unburdened. I closed my laptop, tucked it into my bag, and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city lights twinkled, people passed by laughing, living, loving, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly part of it again. I breathed deep, smiled wide, and walked into my new life. Not his wife, not his shadow, just me, free, whole, and finally at peace.